President Cyril Ramaphosa recently unveiled his new national executive of the Government of National Unity, which includes a number of diverse political parties. Of course, one of those very important portfolios being the Ministry of Home Affairs will see a new minister come in to finish the work of the predecessor, that is Dr. Leon Schreiber of the Democratic Alliance. A lot of questions regarding what will come of the Ministry of Home Affairs, how a number of issues, including the reported backlog, as well as the future of the special dispensations, will be handled once he assumes office after being sworn in. I'm joined now by Dr. Leon Schreiber to elaborate further on this. Good morning to you, Dr. Leon Schreiber. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Kenny. Great to be with you.
I think the first issue we can start at is following your appointment, a lot of questions surrounding your nationality. Now, we know since you've been a member of parliament, at least until 2019, that you are from Namakwa land in the Northern Cape. Perhaps you could give us just a brief synopsis of your upbringing and where you are from.
Yes, thank you very much. I grew up in the Northern Cape, as you say, an area called Namakwa land, born in a town called Piketberg, which is quite a skewed town, but the people are very upright in that town. And then went on to study in Stellenbosch, did some time overseas studying as well in Germany, worked in America for a few years as a researcher on this very topic of reforming government institutions that had been failing or that needed to be reconstructed, and then came back to South Africa and was elected as a member of parliament in 2019.
All right, thank you for that, Leon. We'll get back to the issue as to why the issue of nationality came up. But before we get there, the Ministry of Home Affairs, rather, is dealing with a reported backlog, quite a number of issues and visas that need to be addressed there. How will you be approaching this significant backlog that we see in this ministry?
Yes, well, I think the big picture here is that we must all keep in mind that Home Affairs is actually the department that makes us all South Africans. It is literally the one that gives us our identity. And so it is one that's very personal to every South African. When you are born, then you interact with this department when your parents get your birth certificate. And even at the end of your life, it is again the department that your loved ones will interact with to get that certificate as well. So it's a very personal department. It affects the dignity of South Africans. And I would really like to restore the dignity of the experience with Home Affairs. You mentioned the backlogs. It's one of the many issues that we have to deal with, including things like managing queues better to limit the time that people spend waiting in queues, managing infrastructure better. This phrase of system offline has become an unfortunate South Africanism, and we need to deal with that because the system must be online, not offline. And then, of course, the backlog that you mentioned. So that is quite a major problem that we're currently facing. I am getting urgent advice regarding the issue of a concession that was issued for people who had applied for visas, but who had not gotten it in time. And so I'm hoping to do something about that quite quickly, because I know there's a lot of anxiety around this issue where people have receipts that they had applied, but that the period has actually expired because of the backlog. So these are indeed all of the major problems we have to challenge, we have to deal with. But I am very excited that even though these problems will not be solved overnight, if we can get Home Affairs moving in the right direction, I think it gives South Africans a sense that things can get better in our country. And that is, for me, a very important goal during this term.
In the previous term, there was a migration policy framework that was developed by the ANC to address migration challenges in the country. That includes bringing more stringent measures into the Ministry of Home Affairs. We know you are a representative coming from the Democratic Alliance, but we know that that policy started seeing implementation in the last administration. Does the DA have different ideas towards that policy framework?
Well, of course, if you look at the statement of intent that was signed by all parties in the Government of National Unity, the next step in this process is that we need to have lekgotlas and engagement to finalize policy matters. And obviously, this will be one of the issues that we will need to look at. Of course, this is not an ANC government. This is a Government of National Unity that constitutes a number of different parties in which the DA has a significant share. And so in all policy areas, we will, of course, have to then define that agenda on the basis of bringing together different manifestos and positions. But on this particular issue, of course, the white paper that you refer to, there are a number of bills that still need to be processed around this matter. So I need to go and look very closely at how we align these particular issues from the white paper and how we are able to then practically implement it. Because I think one of the important things we need to keep in mind is that it's not only about what the laws say. I mean, South Africa is notorious for having legislation on the books, but that does not get implemented properly. And so I go back to the main critical priority at Home Affairs, which is to get the basics done better. Because our ability to enforce any of these laws depends on actually making sure that we improve the processes and operations of the department. And that is going to have to be a primary focus for us in all areas, including the particular issue of immigration.
Now, earlier this month, the Constitutional Court dismissed that last leave to appeal by your predecessor with regards to the Zimbabwean Exemption Permit. That is the Gauteng High Court order which invalidated the termination of that permit. Now, we know that this current ZEP that was granted recently will come to an end. It's a non-renewable exemption. What is the future of the ZEP, keeping in mind that whatever you do to the Zimbabwean Exemption Permit has to be done to the Lesotho Special Permit as well, to interested parties that are viewing right now, trying to find out what the minister is going to do about this special program. Will it end following this non-renewable term, the recent one that was just granted, or will you continue with this program that grants immigrants the right to live, work and study in South Africa lawfully?
Well, I think, again, we have to go back to the program underlying this government, which is contained in the Statement of Intent, at least the principles guiding that program. And it's very clear there that we must be rooted in the Constitution and the rule of law. Now, I think these cases that you refer to, however unfortunate they may have been handled, give us some important lessons so that we don't repeat these mistakes, because really no one wins when you have things on the books and when you change things on the books and then you have court cases nullifying that. I mean, it's a setback that actually just loses time and loses our ability to deal with the problem. So I have to go and study those court judgments. I will need to get a sense from the people in the department who I've already engaged with yesterday, a lot of people that I'm really looking forward to working with in the department, to get a sense of what went wrong. And I think we need to learn the lessons of how this permit was handled, because you're absolutely right, Canny, this is broader than just one permit, because this is going to affect how you handle immigration issues actually across the board. And so we're going to have to take some time, not rush into anything, because I think that's one of the issues that we saw in these court rulings, is that we need to go and consider really that we are acting rationally within the rule of law and before we make any of those decisions. So there will be a lot of focus on getting this right, but we're going to have to do it in the correct way so that a year from now or 2 years from now, we don't end up back in this same space having the same conversation. I must, however, also just point out that one of the major problems we have more broadly when it comes to asylum seekers and refugees is capacity constraints. I was quite disturbed to learn that international funding had been reduced substantially for South Africa, and which had previously played a role in making sure that we can differentiate between people who are either applying for visas, coming to the country legally, trying to convert their permits and making a contribution to the country, or people who are genuine asylum seekers, and then people who are undermining the system or engaging in fraudulent activity. We can't actually do that if we don't have the capacity with the relevant committees and institutions to do so. So this is something I'm going to be taking up quite strongly as well. The world expects South Africa to abide by our international obligations when it comes to refugees and asylum seekers, but then there's funding that's being cut from some of these international bodies. That is not acceptable. You cannot punish Africa and South Africa specifically because there are migration problems in other parts of the world. So I intend to be a strong advocate for the world actually helping also South Africa to deal with this, because it's international migration, it's an international issue, so we need also our international partners to come on board.
Just quickly before we wrap, Leon, I don't think I got a clear answer there. What is the future of the ZEP, which has now been placed in your hands as the new Minister of Home Affairs?
Well, the future of the ZEP is that we need to go and review the mistakes that have been made so that we can differentiate between those people who have tried to convert those permits, who have in the meantime become skilled people who could qualify for a critical skills visa or another work visa, and whether those people have actually been let down by the department in trying to convert those permits in a legal manner. That's a critical issue that we will need to sort out, because the court can very easily say, well, it's the fault of the department, and that's why we have to clean up our own act. On the other hand, we need to then look at people who may not qualify for conversions, people who may be engaging in activities that violate some of the provisions around the permit and other issues. And there we will have to enforce the law and make sure that we find a way to move forward with the system that onboards those people who are converting into other visas, who gives them a legal right to do so, but at the same time making sure that people who may not be asylum seekers or refugees are actually also then forced to comply with the laws that we have in this country. We have to restore law and order across the board, but that means Home Affairs and other government departments also need to abide by law and order and the rule of law, because otherwise we're going to keep losing court cases, and that is an untenable way forward for that permit and for the department as a whole.
All right, well, that was the newly appointed Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Leon Schreiber, spelling out his plan for the Ministry of Home Affairs. A lot of work for him to do as he addresses the reported backlogs, as well as the contentious issue of migration and how to handle those special dispensations going forward. I'm Kenny Mapanga for SABC News in Johannesburg.